This is the concierge, sir.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Concierge Confidential. I'm your host, Brian Ortega, and in this week's episode, who knows what we're going to talk about? We're going to talk about a few different things. We're going to sort of button up some things from the movie episode, which I got some great responses to that. That was really, I honestly had a great time doing that episode. One of my best, not going to lie, guys. Probably one of my best because it was one of my favorites. But also, like a little bit of news coming over the wires, which we'll get into a little bit later, is the NBA coming to Las Vegas? That's a very interesting question that's been thrown around for quite a long time. And a couple of things I've learned for myself after starting a new position as a concierge at Fontainebleau, and what I remember about doing or working as a concierge, and some things that you understand about yourself doing something new. So we'll dive into that coming up next. Okay, guys, let's clean up some of the stuff from last week. So I did have a couple people message about, by the way, if you didn't watch the awesome video that I made, because I did the podcast and I was like, I'm going to make a little Vegas video about the movies that were shot here. And I had a really great time watching it. That's on Concierge Confidential _LV if you want to go watch it. But a couple of movies that I left out that I didn't talk about or mention on the podcast were, let's do one, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, which is quite a popular movie with a very certain sect of people. It's with Benicio del Toro, Johnny Depp, about the crazy article then book that was made by my goodness, Thomas. This is what happens, guys. I try to be smart and then I totally forget the name. Hunter S. Thompson, thank you very much. It took me a second. I was like turning my computer on to like look that up, but I got it off the top of my head. So Hunter S. Thompson, about his, what was the word I'm looking for? Drug crazed weekend in Las Vegas, and I haven't talked to you how I felt about the movie yet, and I can tell you honestly, I hate that movie. I think it's actually another one of like the worst movies made about Las Vegas, because it's really not about Vegas. It's about you tripping out in a crazy city in a very dirty town, and the city looks dirty, which is the way it's supposed to look. It's very crazy, which essentially was what its writing was. And I actually didn't even make it through all of the movie. So I know I'm part of the film community. And when I say that, it's just like in general, people who like watching movies, and I am definitely one of the people that says you cannot give your professional opinion on a movie if you have not watched all of it. But I'm not a critic, and I'm not writing this. I am just personally saying the half of the movie that I watched, it's not my thing. I also, in general, with movies as a whole, I am not a fan of drug trips in movies, like when people are on drugs and having a trip in a film. It's usually my least favorite part of the movie. And that's kind of funny because most of Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas is a drug trip, which is the point. So I get that it's not made for me. So I don't like that movie. So apologies if you're a fan of that movie. I don't. The other one, what was the other one that somebody asked me about? It was called The Last Showgirl. The Last Showgirl with Pamela Anderson and a couple other really talented young actresses. I have seen that movie, and it was sort of like in the context of like movies for like the 2000s, the 2010s, the 2020s. It's a very interesting movie, and I actually get the idea from the film. It's a very interesting question because we do have a lot of aging and older showgirls, and not just that, cocktail waitresses who've worked in the service industry for a very long time. And I've said it before that if you are a young woman who obviously, looks are important in terms of, in this case, if you want to be a cocktail waitress or a bartender, a regular waitress, a bottle service girl, Vegas is a fantastic place because there's when I say plenty of jobs, there are a lot of those jobs available for you to try to get. They're very competitive. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, it's very hard to be a bottle service girl in a nightclub. That's very much the big leagues when it comes to being a server, I would say, in any industry, because that's where you're going to make the most money with the shortest amount of time. Like, you essentially work, if you just work in a nightclub, 3 days a week, maybe 4. So that means Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and, however you want to work it out. And you're making, thousands and thousands of dollars from these tables. It's really cool. And the smart ones tend to parlay that into owning Airbnbs. They'll also model as well. It's very rare to find a cocktail server for a nightclub that is not also a model doing something else. It really is like the big leagues. But there's also, different areas. So you can be a cocktail server at a pool. You can be a cocktail server in a casino. You can be a cocktail server in lounges and restaurants and bars. And it's a very lucrative thing to do. So that's why this movie, The Last Showgirl, is very interesting, because it takes somebody who was in a very niche show, which was the big showgirl shows, with a very specific skill set. And once you kind of age out, and you kind of age with the show, essentially, you age out of and haven't learned, for the most part, any other skills, which is very common for people who work in the service industry. You learn a very specific skill set that you are really, really good at. Like, you execute it to a T. But sometimes, especially in service, they don't always translate a lot of the times. The cool thing with people who work at, say, the front desk or concierge in particular, is with concierge, you deal with a lot of different departments. You deal with restaurants. You also deal with the front desk. You also deal with casino marketing for the most part in a casino. You also deal with the casino itself. So people like blackjack dealers, pit bosses, that kind of thing, the cage cashier. There are a lot of people that you come in contact with and learn about, different vendors. And I mean, you also learn about vendors that work outside of concierging. You are like people who work at Maverick Helicopter Tours and tour companies. And it's a very interesting thing to be able to see what they do, because a lot of this is knowing how other people work. And it's a very useful task to be able to use interpersonal skills. And you also learn, this is maybe not always a good thing, about the nicer things in life, because you have to know how to talk to people about these things. So it is a blessing and a curse. I know it's very, very difficult. But it is a very cool job to have. That's for sure. Being a cocktail waitress or a showgirl is really hard unless you don't have like a second job. And this is not saying that cocktail waitresses can't do that. I actually know a few cocktail waitresses that are extremely smart, and they use cocktail waitressing, which is usually like flexible hours, which is nice, to be able, and then also usually really good pay, especially in Las Vegas, to learn something new or have another skill that is an actual career. Like, I had a friend who was a cocktail server for multiple properties, and she was also like a dancer in shows. So she was not an exotic dancer. She would do like go-go dancing and that kind of thing. And while she did that, she was studying to be a pilot. So she actually now flies air tours for the Grand Canyon helicopter tour companies, or the Grand Canyon air tours. So she flies an actual plane. And it's fantastic. And I think that's so cool that anybody can kind of do that. I know a bunch of bartenders. That's like the new thing, is to like learn how to fly, I guess, is like the big thing. I know another cocktail server that she actually is a level 1 sommelier, and she's actually studying to be a level 2 sommelier. And that's awesome. And I think that's a really cool thing to be able to do. So I think the movie is very interesting in showing that there's a certain sort of era that they're stuck in what they're doing, and I think it's a really cool film. So anyways, that was just to wrap up. That was a comment from somebody who messaged me on the gram. So I'm going to go back and actually see what that person said. So this was from, let's go take a look at it. This is from She Shines 1808 on Instagram. Thank you very much for your comment. Thank you much for messaging on that in particular. I also did have a guest listener. Sorry, I'm in hotel mode. I had a listener mention that he loves Rain Man, or he thought Rain Man was a really cool scene. It's true. It was a really cool scene. I wouldn't consider, some would consider it a Vegas movie, but it really isn't. I was very surprised when I watched Rain Man the first time that there was not more Vegas in it, but it was actually a really fun look at like Caesar's Palace, like in the 80s. And then also, it was really known as the Rain Man suite in the suite that they actually stay in, which have been renovated, at this point. But, there's always a really fun line in that movie where the people in the eye in the sky say, "It's impossible to count through a 6-deck shoe," which is hilarious because most professionals, that's what they do. They count through very large shoes, and are able to get the running count, if you will. So, moving on from that, let's move into sort of like the service in a hotel. So I think we all understand what gets you good service. And I heard this thing the other day, which was very interesting, that what is luxury to you? I heard that it was on an Instagram or something. And the guy said, well, you're paying lots of money. It's like, well, no, that's not what luxury actually is. You're just paying for something that has an ancillary amount, and that's not what luxury is. You can pay a little bit of money for gold, and it ends up being worth a lot more, and it just depends, how you look at that gold. And I think that's actually a good way to look at it, because then the answer was, like, what is luxury? It is the service that comes behind that item or that thing. And I think that's actually a very good way of looking at it, because I think the difference in terms of luxury and not luxury is the service that you are provided. And that comes down from, the top all the way to the bottom. For example, a property like Fontainebleau, where I'm currently working at, has a certain clientele that it's, shooting for, and there's a standard they're trying to set, which makes sense for any new property. Any new property on the Strip is going to shoot for the luxury class. Reason being is that, and I know lots of people say this is the problem with Las Vegas, but for new properties, they really have to establish themselves at the beginning, because let's face it, guys, you can't open a new hotel and say, I want to open a new hotel for the everyday person or the everyday man. It is very expensive to do that because of the pricing for the hotel rooms. I think Derek Stevens has done a good job with Circa. I think Circa it's also location begs that. It's like it's the nicest hotel on Fremont Street. But I would say it's on par with most of the hotels on the Strip. There is a difference though. Like, I've been inside of a room at Circa. I've been inside of rooms at Fontainebleau. There is a different level of what is inside of all of those rooms. That's for sure. So, luxury. I think one of the ways that you get great service is that the speed in which things happen is much, much faster in a luxury property, and then the stakes are much, much higher. And it's actually kind of funny. It's sort of like a paradoxical thing. Like, you think when you get more expensive money, people are more demanding, which is true. Like, some people can be more demanding of the things that they expect and how how you get it. But I found that at more luxury properties, you run into very nice people, which is actually cool. And I think that's actually something very interesting with places like Fontainebleau, is that the guests there have probably been to Las Vegas, or maybe this is like their first or second time to Las Vegas. And they tend to be like a little bit more laid back. And I'll use the Wynn as sort of the counter argument. The Wynn has been here for quite a long time, and it's established itself as the luxury hotel on the Strip, 5 stars. And the reason that we hear a lot about the guests at the Wynn is because they've built up an expectation for that property, which is based on, wealth, of course, but also they do tend to gamble a lot more. I would say guests who go to Fontainebleau aren't big gamblers. I would say that they're much more lifestyle-driven guests. They're going for the dinners. They're going for the lounges. They're going for the shows. They're going for shopping. They're going for the pool. The casino's not a huge thing on their radar. It's part of what they want to do to come to Las Vegas. But I would say that they are looking for leisure activities and things that are of the finer things in life, but not necessarily gambling. At the Wynn, it is usually the opposite. You usually have people who like the finer things, but they also love to gamble. And they've been doing it for so long that they have built up so much cachet with the players' clubs is that they now have, and this is for any casino, not just the Wynn. This would be for like MGM specifically, Caesars, unbelievable, is the entitlement. There's lots of entitlement with casino players. And it's at any level. It could be the lower levels all the way up to the top tier. This is again with lots of, this happens in any industry. This happens in, airlines. This happens in any other hotels like Marriott, for example. Reward systems have replaced the old school way of what we used to do in Vegas, is where I knew a guy. It's like, oh yeah, I know John. He takes care of me. And he knows what I'm capable of. It's a one-to-one thing, and your opinion is your bond, or your word is your bond, if you will. We don't have that anymore. It's much more corporatized, which a lot of people don't like about Vegas. Totally get it. But that is one of the tough things about working at places, down the strip, like the Wynn, like Aria. You get a lot of entitled players. I would say Fountain, and again, I'm just using it because I've been working there, and I've interacted with lots of people that are there, is that they haven't built up that entitlement yet. You may get a lot of people who have a lot of reputation behind the property's name because it was opened in, Miami. It's a very old brand in Miami itself. It's established there. And I think what makes the one in Vegas interesting is because it is new. But with that being said, what do I think good service is, like as a worker? So I would say the things that I've learned kind of coming back to concierging is that I would say my number one superpower that I have, because I'm not going to lie, like it takes me a little bit of time to run through the systems. I still ask lots of questions because there are like lots of quirks that you have to learn about new properties. So like when I came in, I was still really sharp. I was still pretty sharp in terms of like what things are on the strip, where they are, like kind of what the experience is. Especially talking to you guys here on the podcast, it's been really helpful because I have to be able to describe a lot of restaurants, verbally. And like, for example, Wakuda is my favorite to explain because, I can explain it like it's, high-end Japanese cuisine. It's very fresh. It's purple. It's very sexy. It's great for a date. It's good for, pre-night drinks. And that type of wording is very helpful for a guest because they've never been there. So it is very helpful in those terms. And that's easy. That's like, it's easier when you've done those things or gone out and done those things as well. So I say it's sharp. But there are little quirks that you learn at every different property. Like you learn about, the pool says it's open at 9 to 6, but is it open 9 to 6 on, in February, for example? Maybe they close early. Are you able to do certain things? One for me is like the cancellation policy on a lot of things at Fontainebleau are kind of tight sometimes. So sometimes it's 24 hours that you have to cancel a reservation. Sometimes it's 4 hours before a restaurant opens or before your reservation. And we put credit cards on file, which is, it's pretty common amongst most restaurants in Las Vegas now. But it's learning little quirks of those type of things. And the good thing also is like I used to go to the property a lot before I was a concierge there, so I was really good with directions. But I would say the number one superpower of a really good luxury hotel worker is anticipation. Anticipation to me is it's like you're reading people's minds before they ask it. And you have an answer ready. Sometimes you don't, but I would say that's probably my number one superpower is anticipating a guest's needs and then also understanding what the follow-up is going to be. And I think also this is another thing that's really important in hospitality is empathy. I've really had to work on my empathy as somebody who works in a hotel. My grandmother died, like I'm going to have to cancel my show tickets or something like that. And we have, procedures and stuff and that kind of thing. And you have to be able to work through that. And I think as I've gotten older, I've gotten better at that. And kind of coming back into the hospitality world, you have to tap into your empathy for guests. because you have to understand, what if that was happening to me on my vacation? How angry would I get? Just as an example, we had a guest who ordered something, and then the room was was messy when we did the setup, and then it all comes down to, like, we want to have the thing in the room. Hopefully they're able to clean the room, and then it comes back, and then they come to the room and it's not clean, which is sort of out of our control. But there's ways that we can coach on it, and I think our manager did a good job of explaining it. And we fell short there, obviously. And we have to understand on our side that, yeah, like, that would suck. Like, you paid, money for something to happen, and then it didn't come off the way we wanted to. And I think what helped is that the guest came to us with, very calm. And I think this is actually a really good tip for those of you out there, that if something goes wrong in your vacation or something doesn't go off the way it is, it's going to suck. It really does suck. You're like, man, it's just not what I wanted out of that experience. And if it's something that that was super out of line or super out of bounds, go to the person or the department that did it, explain the situation, and do it, calmly. Try not to yell at us, because the thing is that doesn't help, to be honest, and it makes us not want to help you anymore. But if you come, like, super calm, like it gives us time to sort of understand and picture what happened, and then able to respond accordingly. Are you always going to get a refund for something? No, some places are very, very strict. But if you do it calmly, like, it's a much easier way of getting something done. But don't just complain. Like, if we did it for you and it worked, don't do that. Don't try to come for a refund. But I would say that anticipation is really important, and empathy are also really important as hotel workers. So let's dive into actually what I ended up doing over the weekend. So another cool thing about this new job is that we do get invites every so often. Sometimes it's, to fill a room. Sometimes it's they have extra tickets left over. And in this case, they sent out an invite to our department from the Win, graciously, and we were able to see Sebastian Maniscalco for his late show on, I think, Friday or Saturday. I ended up going on Friday because it worked out, and he was great. If you are able to go see Sebastian Maniscalco, he's really good. He's really good for anybody who is maybe a little bit older, or has kids, or like of a certain generation. I think he's in his 50s. So I think if you're, in your 40s, 50s, or 60s, I think you would love this guy. It's in the Encore Theater. So for those of you wondering where that is, when you get to the Win itself, you're going to see the Awakenings Theater. You're going to look just to the right of that, and then that will get you into the where that theater is. It kind of looks like you're going down like a convention hallway, and then boop, there's the theater right there. It's really funny. So the show is good. I ended up going to, everybody knows, Delilah's first, had a couple cocktails. Then I ended up having a couple drinks, and then I went to the show. Here's a couple of things if you're going to be working at if you're going to be going to a bar. And I totally had a foul up. It's my bad. I'm sorry to the bartender that I did this to. So I was drinking. I think I had an old fashioned, and then I wanted like one more drink. And I there was a new bartender, so I was like, oh, like, what's your favorite drink to make? I'm drinking whiskey. And then she was like, oh, do you want to try a penicillin? And I said, no, I don't want to try that. And then I was like, I'll just have an old fashioned again. I messed this up so hard. Do not ask like, oh, like, let me see what you can make, and then automatically say no to like every option. That was my bad. So I really apologize about that to that person. But here's another one. For those of you espresso martini drinkers out there, this was told to me by the bartender, and it could be because he didn't want to make the fresh, what's it called? Espresso. I had these guys walk up next to me, and they said, there's two guys, and they said, they were waiting for the bartender to come up. So then they end up talking to each other and say, I wonder if they make fresh espresso. And I'm like, oh God, like, these guys are going to hate this. Also read the room, see how busy it is. And they asked that same question. And then he's like, oh, so like you want for an espresso martini? Yeah, like we have it downstairs. We have to bring it up. It's a whole thing. They end up saying no, like it's no big deal. Just order the espresso martini, guys. Just do it, which was hilarious. And they had it. They thought it was fantastic. And they're like, oh my God, it's so good, which is always fun. It's just crazy. It's one of those things. So yeah, that was a really fun weekend. I think that was really fun. I'm hopefully we get more invites. That's always fun. I would say if you are a concierge doing listening to this, I would say if you get an invite, like do it, just because they're really fun. There's gonna be a point where you want to go to these shows and then you have to pay for them, and then you're gonna say, oh my God, I thought $120 tickets were for that was fine. That was totally doable. When it's your money, definitely not as doable as you think it is. So it's just really one of those things. It's really, really funny the way that works. That happened to me because I ended up like getting free tickets, a long time ago back at MGM. And then like we would talk about people who would pay certain prices, like they should have went for these tickets. And then you have to start paying for the tickets because you don't get those free tickets no more. And you're like, I'm just going to stay home. So be grateful for the free tickets when they do come. It's really helpful. And you do learn a lot about the theater. I just told you guys how to get to the Encore Theater, and then you should go see Sebastian Maniscalco for free. So, last thing, this actually ended up on my Twitter. By the way, if you do want to follow me on Twitter, I've gotten a lot more spicy on there. I'm not going to lie. It's honestly, Twitter is a horrible place. It's actually gross. But you can follow me, Brian Ortega LV, where you can get some of my spicy takes on movies and Vegas stuff. But I did have somebody did put this out there, and let me go ahead and find it. Which I had a really funny response to this. But Sham Charania, who is the insider for the NBA, he ended up saying that the NBA board will hold a vote on March 24th and 25th to explore adding expansion teams exclusively to Las Vegas and Seattle, which has been in talks for like the last 2 years essentially, but now we're coming up to a vote. And a lot of people believe that Las Vegas and Seattle will get those cities for the most part. And then somebody came in who is living in Dallas but works for Cleveland.com and said, we've all been to Vegas, right? I'm not the sharpest marble in the box, but I don't understand how that city can support all 4 major sports teams. And then I had a witty and sharp response. I will skip the first part because my mom listens to this, so I won't say the first part, but it starts with an F. I said, blank, watch this. Blank, watch us. So effing watch us is what I said. We have and then this was my wonderful response. We have the highest grossing football stadium in the nation, which is true, Allegiant Stadium. We have Stanley Cup champions, the Golden Knights, and they've been to, I believe, 3 Stanley Cups, and they've won 1. And also, they are one of the best-selling hockey teams in the United States. One of the 2 WNBA teams that sells out season tickets and are, I think, 2 or 3-time champions. The other team, for those of you wondering, besides the Aces, who have sold out all of their season tickets, are the Indiana Fever, thanks to Caitlin Clark. And then we also have, and then last part, even if the locals don't show up, everyone else will still come, which is very true. And that's how we do it here. So I think Vegas is one of those cities when people say, can we support all these teams? The answer that I always say is yes. Because and again, this is going to sound silly, if our local fans don't do it, people who are visiting and wanting to see their team in Las Vegas will. So it's very much a business thing. I think it's actually good for the city. And I don't know if we need to build another stadium. Like, we can definitely do T-Mobile Arena, and many places do that where they split one stadium for basketball and hockey. And I think we can do it for sure. And I think people in Las Vegas really love basketball, like really love having things to do. And I think basketball is probably an easier sell than things like the A's, which that's going to be very interesting because it's a very, very small stadium. But I do think that Vegas can support all these teams. And if it's not the local businesses, it is the hotels that will help do that. They will push these to a lot of their clients. If they're not selling, they'll push these to their hotel guests. They'll push these to VIPs. And that usually gets the ball rolling. So I also think that LeBron James is extremely interested in owning the team that comes to Las Vegas, which that would add a lot of cachet to this. And they're an expansion team. That's a really, really big part of this, is that people who had a little bit tougher time were like the Raiders, and I think the A's as well, because they have an existing fan base. They are kind of connected to different cities. They are coming here fresh, and they really have to build up that local flavor, if you will. The Golden Knights and the Aces, they were expansion teams. They were brand new, so they were really born in the city itself. And I think that specifically for the Golden Knights was that they came at a time when we had the Route 91 shooting, which really binded people together sort of in the aftermath of that, coming together and that kind of thing. And they really became a fabric in the city. They're a really big deal here. The Golden Knights are a huge deal in the city. And I think I think the Aces, which are super popular, especially, in the WNBA in general, and also they're very good. They have the MVP, Asia Wilson, that, plays for us, and people support them. So I do think that all this stuff that Vegas can't support these teams, they do. And I think that a lot of people put money behind. There's lots of corporate things in Vegas that have a lot of interest when these teams come to Vegas. It's a very big deal. Also, fun thing for those of you WNBA fans, I saw Candace Parker at the Fontainebleau today. So that was cool. So honestly, it's really cool. I have to say, I've had more celebrity sightings in the 2 weeks that I've worked at Fontainebleau than most of the time I worked at MGM Grand. So this will be really fun to be working there for sure. And again, sorry for all the anecdotes that have to do with Fontainebleau, but that's currently where I'm at, and it's kind of fresh in my mind of what's coming in. So hopefully you guys like that episode. I know it's kind of all over the place, kind of a mishmash of different topics, but hopefully that was fun. And yeah, so come back later in the week. Make sure to follow us, Concerts Confidential _LV, or Brian _Ortega 26 on Instagram, and then at Keys to Vegas on TikTok. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate it. Have a good rest of your week. If you see me out in town, come up and say hello. But remember, keep it confidential.